When the Galactic Archives first opened the file labeled Humanity, no one expected it to become the most heavily restricted document in known space, because at first glance, humans appeared painfully ordinary, carbon-based, short-lived, emotionally unstable, divided by borders, endlessly arguing with themselves. Exactly the kind of species the universe had seen rise and quietly erase itself thousands of times before. Yet the longer they were observed, the more the data began to contradict itself, because humans did not respond to crisis the way intelligent life was supposed to. They did not freeze when threatened, they did not unify only when ordered, and they did not collapse when logic predicted extinction. Instead, they adapted in ways that made no mathematical sense, turning disasters into training grounds, turning loss into motivation, turning fear into momentum, and most disturbingly of all, turning survival into a form of expression. Because while their planet burned, their cities flooded, and their skies darkened with their own mistakes, humans continued to create music, humor, art, and stories, laughing not because they were ignorant of the danger, but because they were fully aware of it. And somewhere in that irrational defiance, the first warning sign appeared. A note buried deep in an early observation report that read, "This species does not treat catastrophe as an ending, only as a phase." A sentence that should have stopped all further contact immediately, because no civilization that normalizes collapse can ever be truly defeated. And when the first deep space probe entered Earth's orbit, it expected structured signals, mathematical greetings, or diplomatic restraint, but instead it was flooded with raw noise, news broadcasts overlapping with ancient music, arguments colliding with prayers, comedy shows existing beside footage of war, as if the entire species was broadcasting its mind without shame or filter, and alien linguists struggled to categorize it because humans did not separate thought from emotion or logic from instinct. They expressed everything at once, chaotic but sincere, violent yet compassionate, destructive yet hopeful. And this contradiction made prediction nearly impossible, because humans did not choose actions based on optimal outcomes. They chose actions based on meaning, and meaning changed depending on context, memory, and emotion, variables no clean algorithm could ever stabilize. And as long-term surveillance continued, the data grew darker, not because humans were cruel, but because they were resilient in ways that bordered on pathological. As each time they were cornered by famine, war, plague, or environmental collapse, they did not retreat inward like other species. They accelerated outward, innovating faster, taking greater risks, pushing technology harder, often breaking their own ethical limits simply to see what lay beyond them. And while other civilizations treated fear as a signal to stop, humans treated fear as a reason to continue. And when analysts plotted this behavior across centuries, a terrifying trend emerged. The closer humans came to extinction, the more dangerous they became, not in blind rage, but in focused creativity, because desperation unlocked something in the human mind that prosperity never could. And this was the point at which the Galactic Council should have closed the file and classified Earth as a forbidden zone. But curiosity overruled caution, and a limited first contact test was approved. Not an invasion, not annihilation, merely a controlled destabilization event designed to observe compliance under pressure. And according to every model, human systems should have fractured, governments should have fallen, morale should have collapsed, yet instead the opposite occurred, because humans did not interpret the event as a warning, they interpreted it as a challenge. And where alien strategy was precise, efficient, and rule-bound, the human response was messy, emotional, decentralized, and terrifyingly effective, because humans did not follow predefined protocols. They improvised, they adapted in real time, rewriting rules as situations evolved. And when alien observers watched humans risk their own lives, not for strategic gain, but to save strangers, civilians, even former enemies, an ancient observer recorded a single line that would later redefine galactic threat assessment forever. This species adjusts the value of life based on context, not hierarchy.
And in that moment, the universe unknowingly crossed a line it could never step back from. Because any species willing to sacrifice itself selectively, creatively, and willingly is not bound by deterrence, not constrained by logic, and not afraid of loss. And that realization, quiet, clinical, undeniable, was the true beginning of humanity's legend. Long before the wars, long before the weapons, long before the galaxy finally learned why labeling humans as insane was not an insult, but a warning. And once that line was crossed, escalation became inevitable, because the Galactic Council, still clinging to the illusion that rational pressure produces rational obedience, increased its measures in carefully calculated increments, restricted trade routes, information interference, localized space-time disruptions, each action designed to test limits without provoking outright war. Yet each action only revealed something far more disturbing about humanity, because humans did not react uniformly. They reacted personally, regionally, emotionally, and unpredictably, transforming centralized pressure into millions of decentralized responses, some peaceful, some reckless, some brilliant, some horrifying, but all united by a shared refusal to submit quietly. And as sanctions intensified, humans did not simply endure hardship, they documented it, joked about it, mythologized it, turning suffering into shared narrative and narratives into fuel. Because where other species lost morale as conditions worsened, humans bonded, finding identity not in comfort, but in endurance. And when the first open confrontation finally erupted, an engagement meant to be swift, overwhelming, and instructional, the Council expected a demonstration of power to end resistance instantly. Yet what unfolded instead shattered centuries of military doctrine, because humans did not treat the attack as a defeat, they treated it as confirmation that the universe was hostile, unfair, and dangerous, exactly the kind of environment they had been unconsciously preparing for since the dawn of their species. And while alien fleets moved with disciplined precision, executing flawless formations and synchronized strikes, human forces responded with asymmetry, improvisation, and emotional intensity, deploying tactics that made no sense on paper, but worked catastrophically well in practice, because humans were willing to trade efficiency for surprise, safety for speed, and even victory for opportunity, retreating only to learn, only to return changed. And when alien commanders reviewed combat footage, they found something deeply unsettling. Not fear, not panic, but laughter echoing through human communication channels during active engagement, jokes exchanged under fire, music playing in damaged vessels, voices steady even as loss mounted. And it became clear that humans did not require certainty to fight, they required meaning. And meaning could be found even in defiance, even in sacrifice, even in loss. And as the conflict dragged on, another horrifying pattern emerged. Human technology began to evolve faster under fire, because necessity stripped away restraint. Ethics became situational, experimentation accelerated, and solutions once dismissed as too dangerous were suddenly justified by survival, leading to weapons that were not merely destructive, but conceptually offensive, devices that manipulated gravity, weaponized inertia, destabilized probability, not because humans fully understood the consequences, but because they were willing to test reality itself if it meant gaining an edge. And while alien scientists protested that certain experiments violated universal safety accords, human engineers reportedly responded with variations of the same phrase across multiple languages. Then the universe shouldn't have let us build it, a statement that terrified the Council more than any fleet movement, because it revealed a mindset immune to prohibition, a species that did not wait for permission, did not seek approval, and did not stop simply because something was deemed impossible. And yet, amid this escalating violence, humans displayed an equally confusing capacity for mercy. pausing hostilities to rescue enemy survivors, treating wounded captives, forming bonds with individuals they were ordered to hate, demonstrating that their aggression was not rooted in cruelty, but in conviction. And this contradiction fractured every psychological model the galaxy possessed, because humans could be ruthless without being sadistic, compassionate without being weak, and terrifying without being monstrous. And as losses mounted on both sides, a senior alien strategist summarized the growing dread in a single internal memo. We are not facing a species driven by conquest. We are facing a species driven by refusal. Refusal to accept extinction, refusal to accept domination, refusal to accept that the universe was larger, stronger, and therefore entitled to decide their fate. And that realization, quiet, clinical, undeniable, was the true beginning of humanity's legend. Long before the wars, long before the weapons, long before the galaxy finally learned why labeling humans as insane was not an insult, but a warning. And once that line was crossed, escalation became inevitable, because the Galactic Council,